Okay, guys, it's all yours.
Are we starting early?
Sure, yeah, 2 minutes. Why not?
Yeah. Okay, call to order, 2:28. So first item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda.
I move
So-
to adopt the agenda.
Everybody had a chance to look at it? And any other thoughts, any other items that anybody has?
I can offer a bit of info about the conversion. I just got an email from James Warren. So just an update on the conversion study.
Okay, let's put that last on new business. Julie Bradley is coming, I think she'll be here 3:15, 3:30. We'll do our best to get through it by then, but that'll be when we go in camera once we hit that item on the union contract. Otherwise, okay, so we have a motion for approval of the agenda, second. All in favor? Okay. Minutes from July the 7th. Thoughts and questions on this? Yeah. Any discussion, any changes, any corrections that anybody sees? A motion to adopt?
I move we adopt the
Approve? I guess it's approved.
minutes as presented.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Sign these, give these to Dennis.
Do you want to keep a copy for you?
Thank you. Okay, so first item of business is an item from last time around. You'll see a note in the package from, it's the amendment or the motion that we made, and then Dan's feedback for us with respect to his approach that I thought we should discuss here before we made any decisions on where to go. So we had left or approved a motion or carried a motion last time that said to instruct the Public Works Superintendent to recommend a new section to be added to bylaw 278, which would provide for bulk water sales to interested parties who do not have an existing commercial or residential connection, which would specify the rate structure, both fixed and variable charges, considering cost of water and other costs such as labor, hours of operation, location for loading. Dan's recommendation is as follows. It says, bulk water sales is not profitable at this time. I would like to keep the current position of having the user become a commercial customer and pay all expenses to get water from us, including operator time and the cost of water per fill-up. As the conversion study is in process and referendum looming, I think this is not the right time for money to be spent on 1 or 2 loads of water. This has always been to help local contractors working to benefit Union Bay. So I'll leave it there and just open it up for conversation as to, is Dan coming back to us and essentially saying, I don't think we need to put a bulk water provision in place. So I'd like us to discuss it again, just to make sure that how we might want to factor that feedback into our direction.
I'm not clear what he means by the right time for money to be spent. What money would be spent?
I'm not certain of that either. We can get an answer to that question if we need it.
Well, it just, like, that seems to be his argument, that somehow we shouldn't do this because it's going to cost money, but I don't see how it's going to cost money. And selling the water is not meant to be profitable. I don't quite understand his point. Does anybody know what is the concern?
I know what he said to me
Okay.
was in the regional district, they are set up for bulk water sales. They actually have, you can take your jug and fill it up and they invoice you at the time. So I think he just felt to put any sort of infrastructure in place to do this wasn't worth it considering conversion is coming, possibly coming.
Well,
And that the contractors that are getting water are being charged for it. It's not like they're getting it for free.
So he's suggesting leave it as is,
Yes.
because, so I guess what has happened informally is a person comes asking for bulk water. How it proceeds from there is a commercial account is set up for that person. Am I correct in that?
We've had that happen once. So we've had two occurrences of bulk water, one which was done on the basis of was really gratis, and we then subsequently went back and said we can't do that and billed for the cost of the water only. And then we had another person come along and say, I want multiple loads of water, and they asked in advance, and because there was no bulk water provision, the best thing we could find in order to accommodate was a commercial account arrangement. And so that's what happened in that case. So that's been two examples in the last 6 months or whatever that's happened.
And I think his concern more than anything was around encouraging people coming to buy bulk water. I don't think he feels he has the time to deal with that.
Mr. Chair, I don't think it's a case of the time, it's a case of if there's going to be someone that's hauling water for drinking purposes to the islands, for instance, the Hornby and Denman, there's a case of that could be multiple loads, because this is the time of the year, in some years from now until October, there's a lot of people on cisterns, which means they have to get water from somewhere, and it has to be water we have now some of the best water. So that could be a situation where we would be shipping out a lot of water. And I think there's a situation there where there has to be some kind of limits. Because I don't want to deny anybody water, but the people that are on the water system come first. And I think bulk water can turn into something that can really exceed what you think. If it starts going for drinking water, it starts being called the cisterns on Denman. I built a number of cisterns over there, and you know, they haul 20,000 gallons to fill a cistern, and that's just one cistern. So.
Yeah, my thoughts are that we, probably from Danny's recommendation, he's not breaking it down, though I think we should break it down into filtered water and raw water, right? And he's probably, we should stipulate that people are getting raw water. If a commercial customer comes for a construction purpose for irrigation or watering roads, they should be getting raw water. They shouldn't be getting filtered water. And I think we should just make a standard that we're not selling drinking water that's filtered. And then that gives us an out for now. And you know, I like the idea if somebody wants to get raw water for construction purposes that they can make a commercial account and pay by the liter, so, or by the cubic meter. So, but I think as of now we should just say that we're not going to sell any filtered water.
Okay.
That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, same.
Okay, I appreciate these suggestions. The one we talked about last time too was a geographic limitation, that the use of water is for Union Bay, and if we make that restriction along with filtered, raw water only, then I don't feel as bad about cutting people off from drinking water. And I really appreciate the thought about how much time this could take from our team running the water plant as well. The one thing that I wonder about in here is that in the recommendation, there is still a specification, or Dan says that, we just use a commercial account and that we charge for operator time still, right? Mm-hmm. So in a sense, that's still a bulk water sale in that, when you have a commercial account, you turn on a tap and you get water, basically, right? There's no labor that's involved in it. This has labor involved in filling up trucks. or other containers or whatever. I'm wondering if, what makes the most sense here is whether it is just to have that bulk water, it's X dollars per fill plus cost of water, which covers labor. That we just make that specification, and that we don't have a commercial account set up, because a commercial account does indicate connection and all that sort of stuff, right? So I'll leave it there. Well, that's just, I'm not saying I want that, I'm wondering if that is just more efficient for us to say, as an example number only, it's $100 or $50 plus the cost of the water every time you fill something up. And if you're coming for 20 loads of water, it's $1,000 in the water, right? Because there is time involved in being there to manage the process. And I guess the last comment on cost would be, is raw water cheaper than treated water?
Well, yeah,
It should be.
it is because of the chemicals in the process. The
Doesn't-
hydro,
doesn't
everything
need
else
plant,
that
right?
is done to create that water. So it's, your chair, Mr. Chair, it is definitely a different cost. And then the other thing is, if we go through a conversion and we do end up becoming part of the regional district in Area A, what happens then? Is there going to be some guidelines within that scope that they're not going to be taking potable water and, as I say, shipping it out for drinking water by the truckload? Being it's the only place that is making potable water through a plant, that's another thing that concerns me.
Well, I guess, sort of, if I can pause if you want. My answer to that would be, let's make it raw water for bulk water sales. Water not delivered through our infrastructure is raw water.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'd like,
No,
I
you
didn't
can go
get a
ahead.
chance to
Yeah,
go
go ahead.
around his
Okay.
several times.
sorry,
Um,
my bad.
Well, just because you were now going in order,
Yeah.
but actually.
I know I messed up, sorry.
So, I think we're safe if we stick with that bulk sales would only be for raw water for now. I think that's the safest way, and that we do follow the cost plus labor method. I think Ted is absolutely correct. We're lucky that we've had such a relatively wet summer. I can absolutely see Hornby and other islands on wells coming here for potable water if we had a long hot summer, which is highly likely in the future. So I think we do need to be careful of how we approach this. And I agree, the filtered water by definition is already value-added water, and it becomes a more precious commodity, and it should be intended for the use of the landowners who are the ones paying for the water treatment plant.
I kind of like the idea of retaining the commercial account, because it would seem to me that a person have to be organized, and if they're going to get several loads of water, they come in, they get organized, they set up an account, and then I also see that there should be a process where there's so much notice given to somebody to be organized, but I think that should be part of them getting a commercial account for bulk raw water, would be that they're given some kind of instructions out to 24 hours notice or whatever, so people are organized. I'd like that idea. It would probably control just the one-off guys driving in and wanting a tank full of water. So keeping it that way, having Danny come up with a set rate for, if it's $75 a load or whatever, we should just have a set rate for them to come, and then the charge of the water. Whether we charge less than our going rate right now for raw water, I don't know, that kind of up for grabs, but that's kind of the way I'd like to see it evolve.
Mr. Chair.
I'll just ask if Susanna has.
No comment.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Rick. I think also it gives us a record of the usage of bulk water for now, for in the future. More or less tells us how much of this is going to happen on a yearly basis over the next number of years when it comes to bulk water and bulk raw water.
So I think I'd love.
You have to talk louder.
You want Ted to speak louder?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll try to speak a little louder. Basically what I said was that I liked the idea that Rick mentioned regarding having a record of bulk water sales so that we have a record in the future to tell us basically what is the average going to be over the next number of years that bulk water is going to be requested. That's the gist of it. Thank you.
I think I'd like to hear from our administrator on what her thoughts are with respect to administering this program. You know, that meter reading is one thing, right? But now needing a manual record keeping and invoicing process that would be associated with bulk water would be interesting to hear. So I'll stop there and see if Janice, do you want time to think about that or?
No.
Okay.
When Danny does meter installations and cleans around meters, we get a work order and he lists out all the materials, all the supplies, all their time, and we create a one-off invoice for them. So it would be the same type of process, it wouldn't be hard.
Okay. So you don't have concerns about what you're hearing?
No.
Okay. The one thing that I would add to this, right, is that a commercial account, you know, would specify, you know, well, it's got a few things that are associated with it. One is it's got a connection into the system, right? And the second thing is it buys treated water. So is there any sort of cross-threading that we get ourselves into by not creating a separate billing vehicle that confuses things, right? That if you then say, okay, I have a commercial account and I will come fill up and I'm paying treated water rates, so I want you to fill my tank up with treated water, do we then start saying, as much as we, you know, like our friends over on Hornby Island, are we putting ourselves at risk by allowing that sort of thing to happen because it's just a commercial account? I might be stretching this a little far and drawing too many connections, right? But
We would have a rate code for raw water, so you can differentiate what they've been purchasing.
and would you do that within the construct of a commercial account, or would you prefer to do it in a construct of a different type of account?
I think it would be fine in a commercial account because there's different rate codes. Like we have rate codes for meter installation, we have rate codes for labor, so we would just have a rate code for raw water.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, would somebody like to propose a way forward here? Like, I'm hearing a lot of ideas. What, you know, maybe we just go around and say, what do you think the best way forward is in terms of a, I don't know if it's a motion or in terms of just a statement of the best process to do.
Well, I think that the sale of the bulk sale of water should be limited, barring exceptional reasons, to raw water versus filtered water. And that if it is feasible to have a commercial account set up to do that, then that seems to be the logical way to do it, where statistics are kept. Does that mean that the person, the one-off person, who doesn't have a commercial, like, I guess I don't know what we do with the people who don't have, what would be the barrier? Can you have a commercial account, for example, if you don't have a connection? Can you be a commercial account if you're not a landowner?
Yes.
So, yeah, so that seems to cover that. So that's what I'm in support of. I'm not in support of doing nothing because it leaves our water people at the hands of kind of making it up as they go, and that's just not good for them or good for us. So that's it for me. Thanks.
I agree, raw water sales only, and leave it at that. And again, a record, so that you have an idea of how much raw water you're actually trucking out. It leaves a record, that's what I like about it. so you have a control over how much you're doing. And hopefully you don't have to slow it down, but at the same time, you know how much is happening. So certain times of the year, if we have a really dry spell, chances are we might not even want to bulk raw water.
So are we saying then that we want bulk water sales only in stage 0 or 1?
I'd say in stage
Maybe,
1,
yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to restrict it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that'd be wise. It's a good idea. Because honestly, the concern about scarcity of water is going to only become a more increasingly serious issue.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay, so I think really what we're all talking about here is following Danny's statement that he's actually said here. The only thing that we would have to add is controls by stages of water restriction, and also just that it's only raw water. And so he said everything. A person gets a commercial account, they pay an on charge to get the water, and they pay for the amount of water they get. So it's raw water, and we restrict when they can get bulk raw water at the stages of our restrictions. So that, I think that's pretty well what he's saying, so.
Okay. And it leaves me still 2 questions as, what do we charge for raw water? Do we charge the same amount? Or do we charge a lesser amount, and if so, who determines that? And the second thing would be, so as to make it simple, is what's the amount of the on charge? Like, you know, what's the load charge, if you will?
There is a labor component.
That's what I mean, but
And
let's
we
say,
already have it defined in
Oh,
the
yeah.
program.
What is it,
I
like
don't know.
$75 or something?
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
like but a fixed rate as opposed to an hourly rate?
It's hourly.
I would suggest we keep it simple and make it an hour, or just a fixed rate, right? We say it's this much a load.
Yeah.
So I guess are we still at that same point then? We're asking for a bylaw modification, or maybe multiple bylaws that have to get modified here, including, well, no, it doesn't. It's because of water restriction, it doesn't have to get modified.
And I think we should ask Dan to tell us what, if we do change the rate from filtered water, what it would be. What would be practical? I don't know if we have to really change the rate from filtered water, but that'd be a question I would ask him.
Yes, to me, you know, a lot of the cost of delivering water to an end user right now is infrastructure and treatment, right? Like the water flowing down from the lake through the feedstock is
Yeah, yeah.
a minimal element of the cost,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So
It'd
even
be
if it was,
interesting to see what the RD charges.
yeah. So why don't we just leave it at that, and we just say like, okay, so we're largely accepting the recommendations of our public works superintendent with the provisos that we do a fixed labor charge, and that we sell raw water only, and that it abides by no greater than stage 1 water restrictions.
Right.
Do we need a motion, or is that?
Well, I think when we come back with the rate and everything, then
Yeah,
we would
we'll
make a
do that,
motion on the
yeah.
whole thing.
So basically what we're saying is motion to accept the public works superintendent's recommendations with the provisos as stated previously.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Done. Okay. Good discussion, folks. And thank you to Danny for his contributions as well. Okay, election information from Peter Crawford, and this is really just information. I'm not sure there's action that we need to take. It was really just for the board and the public to be informed to a certain extent here, right? In that, I asked some questions of the elections officer, Janice did it on my behalf, which were all on the basis of what happens if there are insufficient nominations. And, you know, part of that was what would happen to by-elections if we did not have a full slate of candidates at that time, right? And so the process in the election policy is you go to the close of nominations date, and if you don't have a full slate or more, then there's a 3-day extension. And if you don't have it at that point in time, then, the next thing that happens that is scheduled is by-elections, and you don't have a full slate, so what happens? And then, there was a special case in there, what happens if there's none, right? And then the next part was then, okay, so in the election policy, there is then a call for nominations from the floor of the AGM conducted by the chief elections officer. And the same questions apply there as what happens if you get, insufficient or none, right? And none was important in that part, based on where our board is constituted right now. We have 2 expired positions, right, that Rick and Susanna are graciously staying on and keeping this board going. And so we would really only have 2 elected trustees at that point in time, Ted and I, which is not quorum. And so what would happen next? So that's the background of us just knowing here, and I'm not sure there's anything we need to do other than have this information, so that we know what's happening here, right? And these were Peter's answers that are on this sheet of paper that were attached, right? And I don't know if there's anything out of here that anybody wants to comment on. But I think when it gets down, it's at the end of the note that he talks about, that we hold an election after the general meeting and the successful candidates become board members, right? So the current members of the board would remain on the board until members whose term has expired are replaced. So, that would suggest that there's the ability for those who have expired terms to stay on. And I think that's at the discretion of those members of the board, those trustees. And Peter actually puts that in there as that he could resign. And then there's something that happens in the local government where if there are no candidates, then there's a declaration of no election, and then that there's appointments made. So we would have to get legal opinions on, does that apply to improvement districts, and does that, and we need to get a legal opinion around, how would that go for us, right? How does that appointment work for us? So anyways, I just wanted to put it out there and say, is this something that we need to be discussing further here? It really isn't, board decision material. We don't conduct the elections. The administration and the chief election officer do that, right? But
Do we have any nominations so far?
No, we do not. Mr. Chair, I can remember a number of years ago when they had this situation happen. They didn't have COVID or any of that going on, but it ended up that people were asked at the AGM if they wished to put their name forward for a position, and the positions were filled. So it came down to that.
so it happened by acclamation.
That happened by
at the AGM.
acclamation at the AGM. It's rare, but it does happen.
Are you done?
I'm just,
Yeah, I know this isn't our job, but it doesn't seem like he's given us a very clear instruction as to what happens if it was at the AGM. So if there was calls for nominations and 3 people put up their hand, he said that the voting was very complicated. Why would there be any voting?
it's not complicated. Excuse me, it's not complicated. They turn around and they pass out the paper and people do the voting right there at the AGM. And if there's a half a dozen that go up and put their names in, they can put down the ones they want, and that's final, the votes are counted.
Yeah, but like he's saying with COVID.
I know that is the stickler, that is the big stickler.
The AGM the public will not be there anyway. The AGM,
Speak to that.
oh, okay.
let's leave AGM as a separate,
Well,
if we can.
but the issue
Yeah.
that Rick's brought up is nominations at the AGM. So how can that be if there's no public?
I can speak to
Yeah, okay.
Um,
we will do that.
What I'm trying to organize is a live stream, and it will be interactive. So you should be able to have people who are watching nominate and vote. It's,
Vote live?
Yeah.
How do you, oh, okay.
yeah, and the fellow that I've connected with, he has done that for a number of different organizations. It's not fabulous,
No, I don't think it would be.
no.
So, and this is only the case if we have had no names put forward.
Or insufficient. If there was still.
Or like
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
and we need one more, okay. So, yeah, it's highly unlikely.
We're still yakking, so.
Do you want me to come back?
No, it's up to you, up to you.
Don't you leave.
I am.
So, my thought,
I'll get the chair.
let's just take a brief moment to get Julie seated. Hi Julie, I'm Ian.
Hi. Thanks very much.
Okay. The one thing that I think we need to consider here too is that our structure now is we do not vote at the AGM, we vote after the AGM. And we also vote before the AGM. So we need sort of some guidelines around that is if we do not have a full slate, then do you necessarily have advanced polls? My thinking would be no, but we need Peter to tell us that, right?
You're right.
And so then you go to the AGM and you either end up with a full slate or a partial slate or no slate. And then you still proceed to the election, right? And well, you'd only proceed to the election if the slate was more than full. If you
Yeah,
had more
if
nominations,
yeah.
right?
If you had 3 only, then like you
They'd
say,
all be
they'd be
acclaimed.
by acclamation, and
Yeah.
that would be it.
So I think, what I'd really, just to create clarity for the voters, the landowners and everything else, I'd like to see Peter, go through it in that logical progression of if this, then that, right? With the presumption that we do not vote at the AGM, and this particular one would be even more difficult to vote at because it'll be at least partially virtual.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Do you need I'll second that. Or do we need a motion for that, Janice, or are you okay with what?
A recommendation.
Yeah.
I'd say, let's make a motion
Yeah.
to have the chief election officer prepare a detailed plan, a detailed contingency plan, given the circumstances discussed here.
Yeah. If this, then that.
Right.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And so second,
Second,
all in favor? Great.
Mr. Chair, one thing I don't understand, it doesn't state in here, what is a quorum, 3?
5, 3.
Quorum is
3. Quorum is 3.
So if we get one person elected, then all of this would not be necessary.
The place where that becomes challenging is in the event that we require more than a simple majority vote, right?
Yeah.
Because most of those, when we've reviewed it in the past, say a calculation of majority is, for simple votes, is those present in the room. For those requiring more than a simple majority, like 2/3 or change of, administration or those sorts of things, then it is based on total number of trustees, like the full board. Right, so that, for a 2/3 majority, we need 4 trustees to vote.
Okay. Yeah, you should also stipulate that too, for people to understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, RBC loan docs, we just wanted to talk about where are we at with respect to the construction loan, the conversion of the construction loan, the water treatment plant into a mortgage or a fixed term facility, right? I think they're referred to in here as fixed rate term loans in these documents, right? I've read through these, and there's a portion of this that is missing, which is some attachments, which are, specified in here, like Schedule A, B, C. And one of the pieces of information that would be in there is the definition of the conversion date, as to when has this loan been converted, and what does conversion actually mean? I take it means it's conversion from a drawable facility to a repayable loan. And then, have we done any of that conversion, and if we have done it, then, what are the terms that we signed up for? I am unaware, I've not seen anything happen or anything been presented to the board. So I'll leave it at
Well, that's
that.
what I asked.
And this, I asked Robert, who's with the RDC, and this is what he sent. So
So it sounds like we haven't locked into.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay, well, that's actually good,
Well, let's not make that as
as an assumption.
let's say, that's a possibility here, right? But I'd rather us not work on assumptions, but I'd rather work on facts. Can we get a summary from the Royal Bank as to where we are at? Has this loan been converted? Has it been converted into a fixed rate term loan? What are the terms of that loan? Can we get all of the details as to where we're at? Or are we still in a construction loan and need to make that decision?
Yeah, that would be good.
Mr. Chair. Ted, are you aware if the loan was converted? I actually heard
I think it was.
unofficially that it was, but I mean, we were given no information.
No,
as to-
and we should have been.
Right.
But this document
I'm
here
pretty sure that it was.
doesn't even have interest rates or anything on it.
So I think they're in the schedules, right? Well, there is an interest rate for the construction loan, which is Royal Bank Prime plus 0. So,
Which was what? What was the number?
it would
Well,
vary.
prime is like.
It would vary,
two
right?
and a
Prime
half.
rate varies.
Yeah,
Times
2%,
that.
something like that, 2.5.
So that is for its time as a prime rate loan up until time of conversion.
Our estimated cost in our cost projections was 3.5 on our loan.
And that's what this facility is for, is 3.5 million.
No, 3.5 interest rate.
Okay.
So we could be,
We could be less because
Yeah.
the interest rates have dropped.
Yeah, right.
but again, we have not got any information. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be nice to really, could the fellow from the bank actually come and to our board meeting?
I'll ask him. He's
Would that
very
work?
agreeable.
Or do we first have Janice see what information flows from the discussion? And if it's straightforward, then we just go from there. And if it's got complexity to it, maybe we go down that path
Okay.
of having the 10. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think Janice can probably get that information for us and the date that it was converted.
Yeah, well, we need,
Yes.
And then at the same time, if you feel that we need to have a breakdown from the bank itself, I'm sure that they'd be more than happy to come to a meeting and go through it with us.
If we need that, exactly.
If we need that.
And this is information that we want in a form that is publicly transparent, right? And that's
Absolutely.
visible to everybody.
Yeah.
we need to know this.
Do we need a motion there, or do we just?
No, just one thing too, because if the interest rate has changed, we could look at a 20-year amortization instead of a 25-year, which we really wanted to do to start with. So that's why it's really important to know where we're at.
Mr. Chair, the Bank of Canada just dropped the rate again today.
Yeah, so it's getting cheaper, right?
Yeah.
So I guess based on Rick's last comment, it might also be to say, and if it has not yet been converted into anything, what are some,
Options.
what does it look like to have a 20-year amortization versus a 25 in terms of cash flow and
And, sorry. Also, what I'm interested in is how can we get out of it? Because if we do convert, there may well be cheaper, I know this is low, but municipal financing is cheaper than bank financing. So I personally, I'm very concerned about making sure we don't lock ourselves into a long term when we have an option perhaps of seeking cheaper interest rates, because it's the interest that's killing us here. We actually had the money for the cost of for the plant. Well, no, we didn't. It's the interest though that is causing so much.
So I think what I heard you say
Yeah.
there is a part of this analysis from Janice would be to say, okay, what are the options in terms of term? What are the options in terms of, well, there's an amortization period, but there's a term of the loan, right? Do you want to take out a 1-year contract,
Yeah.
a renewal in a year? Do you want to take out a 5-year contract?
Yeah.
Do you want to take out a 20-year contract? And perhaps also to get some information from the municipal finance corporation or association, whatever it's called, right, to say what are their rates versus
Yeah.
the rates we're being charged, so that we have that information.
That would be great.
So I guess what we've really done is had a motion to have our our administrator provide us an analysis of options for our next
meeting.
meeting. Yeah.
Like the 20th?
Yeah.
If that's possible. Like the municipal stuff is just online.
If it's possible, like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
but-
best you can do, you know, you might
if we have to
not
wait
be.
till next month, we have to wait
Yeah.
till next month, right?
Yeah.
If it's been converted, it's a moot point.
The thing is, though, if we're still in a builder's loan, we're not paying anything on the principal, so we should be getting out of this thing. as
Well,
quick as we
exactly,
can.
but we should know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so we have that motion for that analysis. Any second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, great. Leak allowance. This is, Janice, you'd asked this to
Snuck
be brought
this in
forward.
today. The reason why we brought it to you is normally toilets are not covered through leak allowances. But what this is the store. Someone broke into the store and broke a line which caused the water to run. And so their bill was huge. It was like $1,600. 1522.60. So she's asked for a leak allowance on it. And there were hardly any parts. Unfortunately, it had just been running and due to a break-in. So you guys have to.
What is a leak allowance?
A leak allowance is when you normally spend, like $90 every 2 months, and you have some sort of a break on your side of the meter. You can ask for forgiveness once every 5 years to your average bill.
Oh,
Yeah, for instance, say you had a broken line and you never noticed it right
Yeah.
away,
And it
and
ran.
you were away for 5 days, you came back and this thing is blowing
oh, I
water out.
see, okay.
You know,
So to give a summary of this is an administrative, like operational decision as opposed to a governance and sort of lawmaking regulation kind of decision. And while I understand your desire to have guidance, I'm wondering if it's the purview of the board to do this or if it's the purview of administration to make a decision.
Okay, the reason why it was brought to you is it's really clearly laid out what is and is not covered by a leak allowance. This is not
It specifically says break-ins are not covered?
No, it specifically says we do not cover toilets.
Oh.
So it's out of the norm
Do
of
not
what.
cover leaking toilets.
So I'd still make that proposal that says the legislation is there for you to guide yourself on.
Perfect. Okay.
And that's my suggestion on this. Does anybody else have other thoughts that would be contrary to that?
Mr. Chair, I think because of the circumstances of a break-in, normally this would have never happened except someone purposely damaged and caused a water leak. And really, it's very unfortunate. I don't know if their insurance will cover this cost. That's something I'd like to know, is if their insurance would cover the cost of this.
She said it didn't.
Probably her, yeah, I imagine the first 1,000 or so would be on her before the insurance company would cut in, so. It's very disappointing, I'm sorry this happened. really.
So am I. I don't want to belittle the pain that's caused by these sorts of things. And I think we've got a team that can make decisions, but you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think we have to have discretion with all of these bylaws, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if toilets aren't covered, that's kind of, this is not in a residence, right? This is in an outbuilding, it's a separate toilet, and the door is locked and never used. So I think we need to apply some common sense to the whole thing and go with that.
You good with common sense?
You bet.
Does anybody feel the board should decide this?
I think it should be a combination of the board and the administration. It's, personally myself, because of the break-in and damage that was done through no fault of the person that operates the place, it was very unfortunate. This probably did a lot more damage than just the water itself that got away and cost a bill. I can imagine it did other damage to the place as well. So during these times, if there's some way that we can turn around and make this go away, I'd be all for it. Maybe that's just me.
I am fine with the decisions that get made by the administration on this, using common sense and discretion and circumstances. All of that can weigh into what makes a good decision with respect to a once in 5-year legal. The money that's at stake, it's more principle that's at stake here of doing the right thing, because the money is not going to change our budget in any material way. Anything else? Anybody else wants to add to that? Is any more to be said? Okay. And quick update on conversion. Trust culture.
Sorry. Yeah, I just had fired off an email to James Warren asking about the whereabouts of the study. And he answered back this morning saying that it's due in a couple of days. I think you're the only one who wasn't copied into the email. That it is coming due. A meeting will be set up with us to review it. And it certainly looks like it will be available to the public before our AGM, which is really good news. So I'm very pleased to report that. I think that's exciting and we're on track.
I'm happy for that, and the other thing that was in that email is that all parties will be given an opportunity to give input into the draft report, which will then create the final report, which will then go to the public for input. The one thing I would like to understand, in addition to that, is what are the current plans for an open house, so
Yeah.
that information can be properly disseminated.
Yeah,
I don't think the AGM is the proper place to have an open house as well.
No, that has not been finalized.
And what's the timing for that?
That will come up at the meeting. They were certainly looking at, options for having a meeting, including a public meeting. But I think what it was, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think all along there was discussion of a virtual meeting. That was a given. It was youth who actually asked for a public meeting. So
And actually Daniel Arbor wants a public meeting as well.
And I think we've discussed that at the board. We're saying that, the most important thing with this governance study is getting it right,
yeah,
and getting the information out to as many people as possible, right? That we have to be transparent, that we have to accommodate people who are comfortable with technology and people who are not comfortable with technology, people who are more comfortable face-to-face. All people need an opportunity to review this information and get familiar with it. And that's, I think why we said we needed multiple prongs
yeah.
for an open house.
From my perspective, it is an opportunity for all landowners to ask questions. That's my biggest concern. The same with the AGM. Where is the opportunity for a dialogue with our landowners? We have been out of touch with them literally for going on 2 years, because the previous year, most of the 2019 landowners were blocked. So for sure, but on the other hand, that's being weighed with the concern around that I think we're all seeing the numbers and the risk of a second wave of a pandemic coming like October, November. So I feel strongly that now is this window of opportunity for us to do this safely.
That's, Mr. Chair, that's the whole thing. It has to be done safely. The pandemic is with us. We don't have a vaccine yet. Sputnik 5 could be a pipe dream, I don't know. But the thing is, safety of the public is paramount to whatever decision is made when it comes to any kind of a public meeting.
Any other thoughts, comments, information? So that would be, if not, that would be the end of the public portion of the agenda, and we should move to adjourn to in camera.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, that means we've been shut for camera.